Welcome to the Parrish Art Museum podcast, where we aspire to provide opportunities for learning, sharing, and celebrating the many innovative and pioneering artists who call the East End home. Come back each week to find new and impactful experiences in the arts.
Welcome. Thank you so much for being here. I'm Terrie Sultan. I'm the director here at the Parrish Art Museum, and I'm thrilled to welcome you. Tonight's film is presented in collaboration with the Hamptons Doc Fest as part of the Artist Lens series here at the museum. And this season, throughout the whole year, we're going to be focusing on women artists. And I want to thank the director of the Hamptons Doc Fest, Jackie LaFaro, for being such a great partner. This has been a really wonderful partnership. Thank you. This documentary follows the artist Ursula von Rydingsvard. I had to ask her exactly how to pronounce it, and she said there's two different pronunciations, and I should pick the one that I like the best, which I thought was actually very generous. As she completes recent commissions for MIT and Princeton University while exploring her struggles, her passions, and her drive to become an artist. I would say that I first saw Ursula's work when I first moved to New York in 1985, and I have been a big personal fan of her work for all of these years, and it's been a real honor and a pleasure to finally be able to welcome her here to the Parrish. Ursula was born in Germany. Her mother was Polish, her father was Ukrainian. You'll learn from the documentary all that coming from that kind of cultural heritage involves. Right now she's based in New York City, and her work largely focuses on towering cedar structures with intricate networks of individualized beams. That sounds very poetic, and it's also quite true. They're shaped, they're lyrical, they're cut, they're glued together, they're puzzle-like surfaces. They're very abstract in one way, but also very sensual and both spiritual and physical in another. They reference landscape, the human body, and are kind of utilitarian objects, and they all just get kind of mushed together into something that is really very personal and universal at the same time. They're quite extraordinary. After the movie, Ursula and I will sit and talk for a little bit and then take some questions from the audience. The director of this film is Daniel Traub, who is from New York City. He's a photographer and a filmmaker, and his work focuses primarily on border region and marginalized communities. So you could say that, artists are marginalized communities and border regions. But he has also done documentaries on other artists like Lily Ye and Sue Bing. So he got involved with Ursula in a very profound way, and I think we're going to very much enjoy the point of view that he has brought to explaining and revealing Ursula's creative process to us. I know you have a statement you want to have to hold.
Why do I make art? Mostly to survive living in all of its implied layers, to ease my high anxiety, to numb myself with the labor and the focus of building my work. Objects or the process by which I concretize my ideas feel so good. Because I invariably, especially with my monstrous pieces, run into intense anxiety moments from which I have to unravel myself. Because there's a pleasure in it. Because there's a pain in it. Because I endure a hefty load of self-doubt. Because I have confidence in the possibility of seeing this work through. Because I see life as being full of abominations. Because life is full of marvels close to miracles. Because I still don't get who I am. Because I will never get who I am. Because my deepest admiration goes to those who have made art that has interested me. Because I want attention from those who make good art. Because I need to use both my body and my mind. The labor of my body is what keeps me awake and alive. What numbs me and offers a kind of veneer between me and the things in life which are painful to face. Because the visuals, that which I perceive through my eyes, are an extraordinarily important part of my life. Because I don't want to be doing anything else with my life, that the building of my artworks feel like the most consequential thing I could be doing with my time. Because I can run into a world of my making both physically and mentally. Because I like working with a group of assistants who become another kind of family. Because I like the daily rhythm of going to my studio. Because it's a place to put my pain, my sadness. Because there's a constant hope inside of me that this process will heal me, my family, and the world. Because it helps fight my inertia. Because I like embroidering around my long ago Polish fantasies. Because I can reach into the future with my work. Because I constantly need to try to better understand the immense suffering and pain of my family that I never seem to be able to really understand. And also, I want to get answers to questions for which I know there are no answers.
Was that film hard for you to make?
I don't think it was hard for me to make, but Daniel Traub started it 5 years ago. And for 5 years, he just followed me around, mostly in the studio. And it wasn't until the last 3 or 4 months that Bloomberg Philanthropy came to help us. And they actually had film editors who edited the film and who put things in from way back so as to, get a broader understanding. And they were wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. So I think that it was a really consequential thing that somehow we bumped into them and they came through.
You're very generous in your film and what you just read and just in the short time that we've had conversations together. You're very, very articulate about what it is that you're doing and why you're doing it. And you're very generous about sharing that in ways that a lot of artists are not. Is that something you consciously decided to do, is try to share what drives you as an artist?
I don't see it as being generous. I see it as that's what I can do, or that's how I can do it. That's the only way I can do it. Because always, I think many of us, when we speak, we try to say something akin to the truth. And to get at that is almost impossible, especially if you're talking about art, because art is obviously so visual that it is so difficult to come upon it verbally for me. But I'm so happy to hear that you say I'm generous. But I don't feel like I'm generous. I feel like I am trying to say something that's akin to something that feels like, I don't want to use the word truth, but that feels like it's coming close somehow to the truth.
The other thing that strikes me about your work and about the way that it's presented in this movie is, I know that there's a lot of anger, pain, and angst that drives a lot of the practice in your studio, but there's a tremendous sense of joy in the realization of this work. I mean, I see you sitting at the table with all of your assistants, that great picture of you at the top of the sculpture with that beautiful smile and your arms outraised. Like there's just like this absolute sense of, unmitigated joy, almost like a release of working so hard to get to that place.
I don't know what to answer because I love joy. I mean, but that's kind of not a smart way of saying it. But it's not as though I celebrate. But see, I'm starting to say that now, and I'm saying I could say the opposite, and the opposite would be true. That when I do work that I feel is good, I want to be able to celebrate it. But it's not as though, see, I'm going to be tying things in a way that's kind of weird, but not any kind of celebration where I have a party or where, it's not like that. It's like an inner feeling that something fell together, and it might have fallen together not even because this is what I was really working toward. It's often the best things happen where they go wayward, when they go on their own path. But there's something inside of you, and you don't know what it is. You don't know where it is. It might be the brain, but I don't know. But it might be something that's like intuition. Of course, that has to do with the brain. But you need to follow it, and you don't follow it like, all right, I'm going to be tied to you, and I'm going to, because you don't even know what it is. You don't even know, you don't even know how it looks and how, but there are things that one has to, in a way that I have to, in a way, sort of calm down, and that within that calm, that excitement becomes something else, and that there is a kind of, it's not a calling and it's not a will as though you have to do this, but you're feeling things that are very deep and very gentle. You're feeling, and somehow they're helping you to go to a place that might be better than it was before. See, are you understanding any of this? Okay.
Yeah, that's pretty clear.
That's good.
When you were coming up out of school and just starting to become an artist, as a woman sculptor who was really engaged in a pretty physical aspect of making, what was it like for you? Were you competing with the guys? Did you feel like you had your own agency?
Do you mean once I came to New York City? I didn't think too much about what the guys do and what I do, but somewhere in there, inside of me, I have a feeling that, I don't know, I've never said this before, but I have a feeling that somewhere my father is something that I want to say, see, and of course, in reality, that would never happen. He would never see, I don't think I've ever said to my father anything that was more than a short, quick sentence, because he had no tolerance for anything that had to do, first of all, a conversation that didn't have to do with work. Work was an extremely important thing of his life. But anyway, I'm not going to go too deeply into that, and I think I lost my track.
Who did you feel kinship with in those early days in New York when you finished with school and you were thinking about, I don't know, it was different in those days than it is today with, try to find a gallery, try to find people that, will support your work, collect it. Did you have a cadre of other artists that you talked to and felt kinship with?
I don't know if I had a cadre of other artists. And the people that I went to Columbia University, and this was 1973, 74, and 75. It was my master's. And I say in the film that I had this wonderful guy that was he was the one that gave me the cedar. I mean, he's just a huge sweetheart. And he helped make my place, my loft, like somewhat. He made us somewhat able to live in it. What was your question?
Did you have a cadre of pals that you talked to, or?
No, I think that took a while for me to get. I have many friends now, many artist friends that I absolutely adore and who were very close, but I don't think that I had them when I was a student. Mm-hmm. But I have to say that I was the only student, because everybody went away during the summer, so I was the only student that was able to stay during the whole summer, mm-hmm. because my daughter and I lived there. And I remember like being alone working, and that there's somehow that some of the magic would come more readily, if I wasn't with this group. And the torture thing is that steel, I could not work with steel. And the other torture thing was that they were the minimalists who were the big boys during that time. And I just want to make sure that Saul LeWitt is not considered one of them. I'm crazy about Saul, but there were some of the others that were so, they were scholars. They had a theory about everything that they did. They thought that having any emotions in your work was, stupid, and that I think they used to call it heartless, or whatever they called it. So that was also a problem, but it wasn't really a problem because I could then do the opposite. Mm-hmm. Because you knew clearly you didn't want that, so you're just making something else.
Scale is a big part of your work. I don't know that I've ever seen a tabletop sculpture that you've made. Everything is massive in its expression, and with these public commissions, they're so enormous. So is that something that you always imagined, that it needed to have this, a kind of a universal gravitas?
Yeah, I don't, I have actually small sculptures, never tabletop. But I wish I could do tabletop, and I wish I could do more domestic work, because those are the ones that sell. These monsters are sort of, it's so rare, and it takes so much time. But I don't make a monster. I don't make the scale unless it really needs it. Mm-hmm. If it's the piece that demands the scale, it gets the scale. And the beautiful thing about the scale is that you can embrace the viewer. They can stand in front of it, because some of my large scale pieces are flat against the wall. So you're embracing someone, which gives you so much more power. You're embracing them from the top and from the sides. Gives you so much more power. And as it does, if you have a really three-dimensional one, that goes in front, that there's an impact, psychological or physical impact that it has. But I don't do it unless that's what I have to do. Because if that comes about, it's almost a whole year of dedication to this thing, this big thing. But it doesn't make the smaller ones less good necessarily, although I have to say my bigger ones I think are better, but
There are portions of the film where we see you drawing and making sketches, but when you're getting ready to make a piece, inspiration-wise, how does it start? They showed the piece of the image of the haystacks and, all lined up, and, I can see that was an inspiration, but you're in the studio, you're feeling like you want to get going on a new piece. How does it start for you?
I don't know. It's really hard to say into words. It might be that the last piece I did, it was giving me an idea that didn't fit into that piece, but if I wanted it badly enough, it stayed enough with me, then I carried it through with a new piece. But it's so hard to say what the inspiration or what caused, there's no bird that comes and whistles into your ear, and I'm so glad for it. But there are needs, I do have needs, and when they're strong enough, they surface. And it might be from what's happening in my life, it might be from what never happened, it might be from just a lot of things that I don't know, but they're somehow there in a very abstract way, floating, and they're helpful.
Do you spend a lot of time in nature? When you're not in the studio, do you go
Do
outside?
I spend a lot of time in nature? Surely not enough, because I have such a strong, strong work ethic. I don't know, I just, to be in my studio, I feel it to be a place that is so safe. I feel it to be a place where I can really do what I want to do. I feel I don't have to listen to anyone. And this includes not just, the people that are around you and that talk to you, but also the vogues, I don't fold into any of the vogues, or I don't even fold into any of I don't know, when they have names for artwork during certain periods in history and all of that. I probably fit in somewhere, I don't know, but I don't even want to think about that.
Well, maybe you don't need to care about that. You just do what you do.
That's what I do.
Well, I think we have a few minutes. Maybe we can entertain a couple of questions from the audience before we finish, if there's somebody who has something they want to ask Ursula. Yeah. So he was saying that in the film, she does mention that she was introduced to cedar and it became her preferred medium in working. And Steve just was asking if there was anything that she wanted to add to her attachment to that particular material.
It's a soft wood. It's kind of fleshy when it starts, because later on it turns, more and more toward brown. So it's relatively easy. We have to plunge, with every curve, and that's all I am. I'm all curves, that with every curve they make, they have to have like 30 or 40 plunges, that they have to do with the circular saw. I did this for about 40 years, so I know exactly how much I can push it and where I can push it. And we've done things that I'm sure nobody else has done, and also tortured that cedar like it never thought it would be tortured. But everybody thinks I love cedar. I don't love cedar. I tried so hard always to get rid of my cedar, to say, Ursula, when there's another truck coming from British Columbia, I said, okay, Ursula, this is the last truck, right? The last one. And it just doesn't want to go.
Just keeps it.
So here I am. And I hate to say that, I'm allergic to it. I've been allergic to it for 20 years. So that's why I wear this whole, gear that's actually very heavy, and I don't know. So there we are with cedar.
Well, that was interesting. So you probably like bronze and copper a little bit better. You're not allergic to it.
No, bronze is a very, very hard, dense metal. And it took me 20 years, 25 years to figure out how to make it softer, and it happened by the kind of, they're not pleats, but the kind of waves, they're not even waves either, but the kind of structure, it's a structure that I give the outside of the bronze. That there's a way that it sings and that it pretends that it's not heavy, heavy, heavy. And the most beautiful thing is what happens at the top with the small perforations being toward the bottom. And I've done outrageous things in terms of, making those perforations bigger and bigger as they go up. And then, these awkward fingers, that poke toward the sun, toward the sky. So I had to find a way of making that bronze behave the way I want it to be behaving, and to be something that is much softer and much more open, psychologically open.
What's next? What's your next project?
I'm going to Denver, and I have a show at a place that is the Denver Botanical Gardens. So it's a huge park, and they just finished building a building that's a museum. Almost finished. I'm the first one to be using it, so I'm going to be showing there in May.
Wonderful. Well, Ursula, thank you so much. This was very, very wonderful.